So welcome again, everyone. I'm so glad you're here for this wine and webinar, first one of the season. It's all about membership mindset and why we all need a membership mindset. When we first started thinking about what we would do and who we would have speak, we did a couple of quick searches and found a whole treasure trove of articles written by this guy named Joe. And so we went ahead and reached out to him and said, hey, why not have someone who's written a bunch about this come and give some presentation, give us a presentation on it, and lead us through some slides and a little bit of a discussion. So it was great. Reached out to Joe. He was agreeable to join us. We're thrilled to have him. He's up in the New England area, up in Connecticut, and has just narrowly avoided the big storm that was up there. Took a turn in the right direction, so avoided most of things. So we're glad Joe is able to be with us this evening. Joe, I'll let you introduce yourself from there and tell us what you are drinking.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks everyone for having me. It's really great to be here. Yeah, I'm Joe Romanecki with the Entomological Society of America, which is the membership society for insect scientists, people who study insects and related arthropods. I'm the manager of communications there, so I oversee our blog, social media, media relations, and all kinds of other communications. At the moment, I've got water because I will be talking, but I do have my glass of wine here, red, that Damien was kind enough to send me. I forget which one it was now, but it was very nice. I had a sip already. So yeah, but excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. And I think, let's see, I think Joe is gonna take and share some slides with us and lead us through some of the things that he does. And so Joe, the floor is yours.
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
All right, let me get this set up, make sure I have this sharing. So are you all seeing the slide there? No. Sorry,
there it is.
Seeing the slide, very good. Okay, can you still hear me too? Okay. All right. Let me close one more app here just to make sure my system doesn't slow down on us. Okay. All right. Well, I'll dive in. Yeah. Thanks again for having me. I'll just get started with kind of my background and who I am, and elaborate on what Damien was talking about. I'm a journalist by training, and I landed in associations. I fell into associations, as so many people like to say. And my second job after college was I landed at ASAE, the mothership, as they call it, and spent my time 9 years there with Associations Now magazine as an editor and writer there, working on the magazine, their newsletters, and their blog. Acronym, if you remember that from years back, and then the Associations Now blogs. And in the last few years I was there, I wrote the weekly membership blog, and membership was my beat, so to speak, as a beat reporter on association membership. But it was a really interesting education in the ways of membership as a concept, a practice, a philosophy, what associations do. I really enjoyed that. But in 2016, I moved on from ASAE. I went on to the Entomological Society of America, again, as manager of communications, overseeing a lot of all of our communications operations outside of like marketing and our journal publications. I'm in the same department as those two, but not directly responsible for those, but I work closely with those parts. And so when Damien reached out, it was a chance for me to kind of reflect on how I have taken what I learned about membership at ASAE and all that time writing about it, and how I apply it now in at least my role now in communications. Now that I'm in a different association function. I'm not just writing about it. How am I applying all of that? And I figured I would share some of the lessons that I've been applying in my role. It's specific to communications and that particular area, but I think kind of what I'll have to share likely applies in whatever part of associations you might be in, or if you're, up at the top, kind of responsible for a little bit of everything, of course. Let's move along. So as Damien mentioned, actually, this is the article that he had mentioned in the email when he emailed me, and this one I think is a good place to start. So this was an article that I wrote for the volunteer leadership issue of associations now a few years back, which is the issue that they do or have been doing at least once a year that was sort of dedicated to board members. It had like the board orientation kit in it and things like that. So this was an article that was geared at association board members who might be coming from, whatever field they're in, construction or something like that. Sort of like a crash course on what membership is. And there's some good lessons in there. And I can share that link later if anyone's interested, but there was a part of it that has always, I remembered it was in this article right away. It's something that stuck with me about, what we, it's about getting into the membership mindset. And there's this quote here about board members, they're the most engaged members of your society, of course. And this is actually goes back to ASAE research called Decision to Join, Decision to Volunteer from years back, where the data showed that they talked to association board members and then some of those associations members, a bunch of different associations, and found pretty consistently that how those two groups view their association is different, just fundamentally different, because board members are so engaged. And I love the quote. I think this was from Mark Golden. Board members make a lousy focus group, and I think that's an important thing to remember. And you can also replace board members with staff in that sentence too. We live and breathe our association every day, whatever it might be, and so it's hard to be objective about your association. But that's what it means to sort of get into a membership mindset, is to get out of your own biases and your own perspective and viewpoint and try to understand your association from the membership viewpoint. And so when we talk about membership mindset, at least the way I'm thinking about it, there's two ways you can look at it. There's, of course, how does my work support membership in the society, like in terms of getting people to join and renew or engage. But there's also just, how do I get into the mindset of a member? How do I understand the member experience? And I think I'll focus a little bit more on the latter part of that. But I think if you're working hard to make sure you're understanding the member viewpoint, their perspective, their experience, you'll be well equipped to support membership as a department or a revenue center, or however you want to look at it. So I'll start off with, so this will be the one one bug adjacent section of my talk here. So this is a little quiz. There's a picture here and a sentence, and I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts about if there's anything, what might be wrong with anything here. Anyone got any ideas? Feel free to unmute and shout out. I don't know. Not expecting that you would know. But
oh wait, are ticks insects?
No, they're not. So there's one.
Are they parasites?
They're arachnids. They are parasites, yes. Yeah.
Ooh.
So
nerds.
Anyone else?
Who said that first? Was that Damien?
I did. And I'm going to go to the Latin there. Dermacenter variabilis can't possibly mean dog tick.
Well, they don't always translate, but
yeah, fair enough.
Well, I'll dive in and share. So there's a few things wrong here. First of all, the picture there is not a dog tick. It's a black-legged tick. It's a different species. And also the American dog tick isn't a carrier of Lyme disease.
Deer tick, right?
Deer tick. Yeah, deer tick is another name for black-legged tick. Again, so there's different species.
Harry Wheatley for the win. Come on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'll get to my point here in a minute about why this matters, but and to get even like more nuanced into the weeds, like some of our members would nitpick about the fact that technically mosquitoes and ticks that spread, they spread pathogens that cause disease. So something doesn't transmit Lyme disease, it transmits the bacteria that causes Lyme disease.
Ah.
So, again, like this is, details. And I'll explain what I'm getting at here in a moment. We'll go to one more. So here's another one. Anyone have thoughts on this pairing here? There's less going on with this one, but anything look amiss here to anyone?
That doesn't look like a bee.
Definitely not a North American native bee.
Who thinks it's a
no,
bee?
it's like
Anyone?
it's like
Actually, a murder
yellow
hornet.
yellow jacket or a hornet.
All right, we've got some astute observers here. Yes, that is not actually a bee. It's a fly.
Really?
From a group known as Hoverflies, and they're bee mimics. And I off the top of my head, I forget why they mimic bees, but they do visit flowers. They do some pollinating, but that's looks like a bee, but it's not. And so the reason I'm sharing this, and this is kind of one of the first lessons I learned when I got to ESA. And fortunately, I didn't make these by mistake. I had a good boss who kind of flagged me on the things I need to make sure I understood. But one of the reasons we need a membership mindset is because members will notice if you don't understand them. They'll notice the little things. If you're not getting those right, it's not going to look good. They're going to notice that you don't seem to understand their line of work, what they do. This is the kind of stuff they live. And so entomologists, if I called a tick an insect, which I think I did actually accidentally do once on a blog post at some point, they'll jump right on it because they know. And so that's one of the lessons I've taken in my work so far with ESA is that getting some of the little things right matter because it shows that you understand your members. And so it's important to kind of understand where they're coming from and, get your hands a little dirty in terms of understanding what they do. So I've certainly learned a lot about insects and things that aren't necessarily insects along the way in the last few years. Next story I'll share, is about a couple bylaws changes that we've gone through in the past few years. So back in 2018, we had we went through a fairly significant governance overhaul process. The gist of it was that we were getting a lot of the nutsy boltsy stuff that really didn't belong in bylaws, like the operational stuff that had kind of worked its way in there, out, kind of simplifying the bylaws, putting more of it in policies and procedures. And it was like a year-long process, and we communicated about it a lot because it had to be, the whole set of bylaws amendments that need to be voted and approved on by the members. So we had a landing page about it on our site where we kept updating all the information. We showcased the committee that was behind it. We had our president and past president talking about it on video. We had a whole page of FAQs. I mean, we had like 50 FAQs about this. Any question people sent us, we answered and put up on the website. And we had a whole presentation, short presentation that our executive director at the time would give when he went to our regional board meeting or regional meetings to talk about it. We just communicated the heck out of this thing, and it went well. It was approved and it was successful. So we were happy about that. This year, just in recent weeks, actually, developments here, we have another bylaws amendment that's smaller. It's just to add a particular seat to our board member dedicated to our early career professionals. And it was our board supported it and said they wanted to put it on the membership ballot back in April. And this is basically all we did to announce it. We put it in a blurb in our biweekly member newsletter, and then we got around to putting it on our website and on the ballot when the voting period opened up. And sure enough, people were a little caught off guard by it because not enough people had seen the info about it. And we had some past board members who actually complained and said that what we communicated about it didn't actually meet the letter of our bylaws that said how much we had to explain about proposed bylaws amendments. And it got to the point that we pulled it out of the voting period that we have in the summer, and I'm going to reissue it as a special election this fall. It's kind of a big mess. And so I really didn't, you know, I take responsibility for not heeding the lessons we learned from the previous success and applying it this time. Our mindset, internally was that this isn't a huge deal. Members just kind of need the basic info, and they'll figure it out. They'll decide. And now that didn't go well. And so the lesson here is that, again, we have to have that membership mindset, because members don't have the same knowledge we do. They just don't. They're not in it day to day like we are, and they need more information. And this graphic is one that our executive David Gamble made back when we talked about the previous board the governance overhaul a few years ago. What I would ask about over communication, sometimes we feel like, from our standpoint, we're talking about something over and over and over and over again. It's got to be like we're just beating a dead horse. But what's the worst that can happen if someone hears about something too much? They complain a little about hearing about it too much. Whereas the worst that can happen when you under communicate is that there's confusion and chaos and a backlash. And so I think we maybe sometimes worry, or we feel like we're communicating about something more than we need to, when if we're taking that membership mindset, we'll realize that what feels like over communication to us probably isn't anywhere close to too much for your audience, because they're not going to read every single thing you put out. They're going to miss some of it. They're not going to understand all of it. And so the more you talk about something, usually the better, especially when it's something important like a bylaws change. And so
Joe, how big is the associate? Is the society?
So we've got about 7,000 members.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously it's an individual. And
yes.
And how many go to your big convention every year?
We get, well, in normal years pre-COVID, we were getting between 3,000 and 3,500.
Wow, so almost half your members come?
Yes, although it's a weird, being a scientific society, like they come to present their research. Something like 4 out of 5 people who come to our conference are presenting like a 10-minute presentation about their paper. Like most people are there actually presenting, and we have like a couple thousand of these if you're counting every single 10-minute presentation or poster that's being presented. So that's a whole different story, and that kind of like blew me away when I came on board as well, because it's so different from the ASAE context, where it's the hour-long sessions and whatnot. So
Mary, how does that match up with the things that you've been part of? I'm just curious.
Yeah, about 15,000 for ACR.
Yeah.
On a good year, yeah. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay.
So another, a scientific gathering type of a thing.
Yeah.
Where do they do their conventions normally? Is this like a Las Vegas crowd, or where do the scientists go?
Well, at least for us, we rotate place to place each year, like other associations. I don't think we fill anything as big as Las Vegas. We were in Vancouver a couple of years ago, and are going to be in Denver this year, assuming all of our in-person stuff can stay in place.
Nice. Yeah, ACR did like Chicago, DC, San Francisco, Boston, San Diego. But yeah, a rotation like Joe's group.
Mary, did you say 15,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
How many attend their conferences or conventions there?
Or that is the conference. Yeah, for members, it's like 6,000.
Wow.
And then 15,000 at conference. Yeah.
Still a good percentage.
Yeah. So just, Joe, I think that question came up in the chat. So I'm going to try and direct questions to you that pop up.
Please do, yeah. I'm missing the chat, so yeah.
I figured as much. So it's just this idea of like, I think when you've got that many members that you're trying to communicate with, you probably have multiple, not just multiple platforms, but multiple messages as well.
Yeah. I had the other slide deck from when we talked about, because we actually talked about that governance communications plan at an ASA meeting a couple of years ago. And yeah, I was looking at that. Yeah, we kind of identified like the really diehard members who really care about it, the kind of volunteer leadership more broad, like volunteers more broadly who really need to know about it, and then the membership at large. And we kind of tailored the messages a little bit differently, knowing that different audiences cared to different levels about a bylaws change. And then yeah, we were communicating about it across social media, our website, our emails, standalone emails, our newsletters. I don't know if we did anything on our blog about it, but you know, we had the presentation, like I mentioned. So it was multi-channel, multi-message, just because it was that important. So. All right, I'll dive into the last item here. So I'll share a couple PR crises that we've had in the past couple of years. One was in 2019. We announced our annual slate of fellows. We have, you know, it's an honor that we bestow on members every year. 10 members every year become fellows of the society. They're established people in the profession. And that year, all 10 were men, and in fact, all 20 nominations that we had gotten were men, and we proceeded to, you know, name 10 of them. And when that slate was posted, our members, a lot of people did not like it for obvious reasons, lack of diversity, of course. And I think we knew that it wouldn't go over well, but we still underestimated how badly it would go over. And so this year is just the beginning of the cleanup message afterward about you know, what we learned and how we're going to move on from it. And then last year we renamed our student quiz competition. We have this like trivia bowl game kind of thing, quiz bowl sort of thing at our conference every year. And for years it was called the Linnaean Games, named for Carl Linnaeus, a scientist from 300 years ago, who said some kind of predictable things about races 300 years ago, and became a lightning rod among our members. And there was a push to rename it. And actually in 2019, we had a task force that sort of got member feedback, and we tried to thread the needle by not renaming it, but kind of recommitting to diversity. And it didn't work, and it came back at us. And then last year, amid you know, everything that went on last summer, our members latched onto this again and really brought it to. We needed to go ahead and change it. And so the other lesson I learned out of this, and that I'll share again, why we need to be in a membership mindset, is just because your membership is changing faster. You know, that's just sort of the way of the world now. So that's the other kind of big lesson I've learned in communications about, you know, being in that membership mindset. And so, you know, those are just kind of 3 lessons I wanted to share. You know, I think for me, like as a communicator, you know, having a membership mindset, just a habit, build something, a voice you keep in the back of your head. To borrow a kind of a cliche phrase, this is sort of like, you know, what would a member do? Is something just kind of always remember. You know, for me as a writer, I'm always trying to think, what would my reader understand when I'm writing? And I think for anyone in associations, just trying to remember, would our members understand this? How would they view it? It's just something we have to be doing every single day. So, so I'll stop there and say thanks, and we can kind of dive into questions. And I'm happy to talk about anything anyone would like to. I hope that was,
yeah,
that add a little, you know, insight for you.